Welcome back to the channel. This is the Action Figure Grader, and today we're going to look at some loose complete figures, some baggies. We have a glass leet tie interceptor that was loose and kind of used contents, but very rare, as you can tell by that box. Not something you see very often. We got some loose graded as well. So at the very end, we also do have some bootlegs, some both Mexican and Polish bootlegs that were certified by CAS that sold at auction from our trusted seller, Gold Star Tech. So just kind of a little bit of a mix, maybe a little bit of a watch list clean out, get it out while I am getting ready to go travel next week. So I thought we would just kind of look and see what we got here. So first of all, this is that one that I had in a what to buy video, maybe a couple weeks ago. 85 plus grade vinyl cape Jawa. It does have the label up top, which I don't like, but you know, this is a very nice item. This is a very, very nice item. And the interesting thing is that it's sold for a lot less than what I was expecting. It sold at $29.57. And in all fairness, there have been a lot of vinyl cape Jawas that have hit the market, both AFA and UKG graded. I don't know if we've seen any CAS graded ones lately, but the prices have come down. And this was, I thought, a very fair deal. $29.57 on 63 bids. That's about where an AFA 80 plus or 85 goes for. So that I think was a very good deal for somebody. So great pickup there. This is the Spanish PBP. It's called the Fat Lips Bosque. And my wife says that she's going to give me a fat lip if I buy anything this year. So you know, the paint apps on the face are just, you know, it kind of looks like a lipstick version of Bosque, and, you know, a fairly desirable variant that can be pretty pricey, ungraded, even in the Facebook groups. And this one was very clean. It was a 75 grade, which I'm trying to figure out why. And I think it must be because of the paint on the back of the butt there. You can see on the white, there's some paint scratches. There's one little tiny nick on the back there. On the front, it looks really clean there. I think the paint on the cross, the black cross on his chest, is missing some paint. And, you know, this is just a common thing with the Spanish PBP figures, is they're kind of known for sloppy paint apps, paint that doesn't stay on very well, plastic that degrades. The sonic welds are terrible and they can fall apart in your hand, which happened to me one time. So these kind of things are kind of what Spanish figures are known for. They're not the highest quality figures. So getting a 75 grade is not, you know, that unheard of with the Spanish figures. Still a very desirable variant, sold for 285 pounds, which is $354. That's a pretty fair price. I think I've seen ungraded examples go for $400 plus on Facebook. So I thought that was a pretty good deal for a graded one. We had an 85 grade Hong Kong Max Rebo. This was from the Muffin Man. He listed a bunch of items here recently that some folks picked up. So this one I did send out to my Patreon supporters in a buy it now alert. I don't know if one of y'all bought it or not, but really great case. I like how UKG and Cases and CAS, I think that the two of them do really good jobs for the Max Rebo specifically. That kind of elevates the case, I think. It looks, or the figure, it elevates it really nicely. And that one sold for 195 pounds, which is $242. Good deal. This was a great deal. This seller, Art Ladder, is one that watches the channel. It's a friend of mine. So, you know, he didn't ask me to do this, okay? But, I you know, if you are looking for high-grade baggies, loose graded, especially Luke Bespins, some mint on cards. He's got a lot of mint on cards that are graded. You can go check out his items for sale on eBay. He usually does have make an offer alerts or make an offer options. This one I thought was a great deal, and I did send this out to my Patreon supporters. This is the orange-haired Luke Bespin, the true orange-haired, not the ginger or the light brown or, you know, any kind of color there. This is what I consider to be the true orange-haired Luke. Very tough variant to track down. Labeled the orange hair there. That one was graded CAS 80. And it sold for $239, which I thought was a very good deal. I know that Chris over at Rogue 5 had an AFA 85 that he sold for about $450 or $500. I don't remember the exact number, and it was snatched up like immediately. So I sent this out and said, this is a great deal, guys. And one of my Patreon supporters did let me know that he picked that up. So I thought that was a very good deal for what that is. There's obviously the blonde hair and the light brown hair or brown hair, but you also have a ginger hair and then an orange hair. And it's tough to tell sometimes the difference between the orange hair, which what this is, versus the ginger hair, which is kind of a mustardy, kind of dark mustard, Dijon mustard, Grey Poupon color. And so yeah, it's a tough one to track down, this orange hair, this true orange hair. So great deal on that one. Back to the Muffin Man. This was the Hong Kong dark pants version of Han Solo. This is a tough variant to track down as well. I picked up one of these myself. And I don't know if it shows in the, in the camera, but this is a very specific color. It's specific. It's just one of those very tough variants to track down. So hopefully one of y'all were able to pick that up when I sent that one out in a Patreon alert. But that one did sell for 125 pounds, which is $155. I bought a UKG 85, and I paid like $210, somewhere in that ballpark, $220, and that was on Facebook. So I thought this price was very fair for a UKG 80%. Another Han Hoth. This was ungraded. This is the molded plastic legs Han Hoth, and so this is not painted in any way. These are truly molded in that color, in that plastic color. Very tough variant to track down. Although lately, it's weird. Lately, there's been like 3 or 4 that have all popped up on eBay at the exact same time. And that's just the way it goes. I mean, I went back and tried to remember when the last time I saw one on eBay, and it was like 6 months. And then all of a sudden, bam, there was 3 or 4 of them that all got listed. This one sold at auction for $143.50. So that shows you how tough it is to track down this particular molded legs. It's molded in this specific plastic. That's not, paint. That's either paint splash or that is some kind of discoloration. But that is a true molded legs, and molded in that very light plastic color. So that's what you look out for. But that was, that's about what they go for. I mean, 140 to 180 ungraded is about what they go for. And graded, you can probably double that number in high grade pretty easily. Here was an ungraded die-cast Thai bomber. This is the cheapest price I've seen for one. I did send it out to my Patreons. I don't know if any of y'all bought this one as well. But, it was not perfect, in all fairness. It did have a lot of paint chipping on it. But when's the last time you've seen the Thai bomber, die-cast Thai bomber, sell for $500? I mean, it never happens. I've seen examples in similar condition go for $800 or $900, and then obviously in higher grade, even ungraded, they can go for $1,100 to $1,400 pretty easily. So $500, I think, was a very fair deal for what that is. That's about as cheap as I've ever seen, actually, on eBay. This was an ungraded multi-pack, department store multi-pack with Chewbacca and the 2 droids. That sold at auction for $565. The baggies were all factory sealed. And unfortunately, the box did have some writing on it. It says, "Do not open packages, Star Wars figure, save." Ugh, man, if they'd only know that the box itself was valuable, because that really hurts it, in terms of resale potential. But that one did sell. Great display piece, just the way it is right here. I mean, I don't think I'd bother grading it. I'd probably just put it in the sliding acrylic case that it came with and put it on your shelf if you're into collecting baggies and multi-packs. But $565 is what that sold for. Here is that Brazilian glassleet version of the Thai Interceptor. It's a very specific metallic gray plastic that is much different than the standard Kenner version. And it also has very specific decals. It's got like racing stripes on it. You can see the racing stripes on the cockpit there. It's just a very interesting item with a really cool box showing Darth Vader. "Join me, Luke, as father and son, and we'll rule the galaxy." I mean, it's just such a weird item. Very specific box art to it. But even still, in this condition, it still sold for $761. I've seen some factory sealed examples go for over $3,000, so I thought that was a very fair deal as well. Here are some baggies. We had a blue snaggletooth baggie that included the original mailer box for the 2-pack with Greedo. And it didn't include the Greedo, but it did include the box, which I would argue is probably more valuable than the Greedo. And then obviously the blue snags baggie is very expensive. And this one was very high grade. It did have a hole in it, but that is a factory applied hole. that it's like a breather hole, to my knowledge, and that it just allows the baggie to kind of collapse for these department store packs, so they fit snugly inside the box without it being an issue for the actual factory assembly job. So that one sold for $12.80. I think pretty easily you can find the SWC baggie for Greedo. That's a very common baggie, and you would have the entire set, and then you could send it for loose grading if you wanted to. You don't have to, obviously, but I just think that given the value of the Blue Snags baggie, it's probably worth it. I mean, I've seen baggies, this baggie alone go for that price, so I thought that was a very fair price. I was thinking $1,000 to $1,100 was about my number, but it did sell for $12.80, so a little bit higher than I was expecting. Here is that baggie for the ESBC Yoda, but this is the apple-headed Yoda. And one of my Patreon supporters did pick this up in a buy it now. I had this in my what to buy video. I don't know if it was a Patreon supporter or just a channel watcher, but whoever you are, thank you very much. My channel did get credit for that. And as a side note, if you want to be a Patreon member but you don't want to pay, there is a free tier, okay? You just don't get the buy it now alerts immediately. You'll just get them later. And some of those items won't be available anymore because they get bought. But if you want to be a free member to my Patreon and you don't have the money to be a $1 tier a month Patreon member, it's okay to be a free member. So oftentimes I do list items that come up and they don't get picked up by my paying Patreon members. And my Patreon members also do get 24 hours early access, the paying members. So if you don't care about any of that, you just want to get some buy it now alerts a little bit later. I think they usually send out 3 days after my paying Patreon members get it. So there is a free tier. I just want to make people aware of that. Again, I don't really care if you join my Patreon or not. Okay. I've gotten hit from people saying, you're just a Patreon shill. I don't care, okay? I appreciate my Patreon members. I make my videos and I continue to have the channel running because the Patreon members help support the channel. But if you don't want to be a Patreon member and you just want to watch my videos, that's okay too, okay? So I want to make that clear because that's a comment I've seen in various Facebook posts about my channel. And, it is what it is. You're going to get criticism no matter what you do. But I do want to make that clear that there are free tiers for my Patreon members. But this one did sell for $6.75. And again, thank you, whoever bought that. I really appreciate you supporting the channel by using the links. Likewise, someone also, this was a Patreon member and a friend of mine who bought this one. And he did let me know that he picked this one up. This one is the apple-headed brown snake. It's called the rigid brown snake. Rigid brown snake. So it's a different type of plastic used for the snake type. And it's the bright green apple-headed Yoda AFA 85. And he sent me an email letting me know that he did use the Patreon link or the affiliate link for eBay. And he mentioned that there's not many of these on the census. It's less than 10 that are on the census in an 85 grade. So thank you very much for doing that. I really appreciate that. $10.50 was the final sales price. And I take that back, actually. He forgot to use the link, but he ended up sending me a PayPal, a YouTube super. So I misremembered that. So it was Trilogy Hunter 77. He sent me a YouTube super because he forgot to use the link. So thank you for it's very thoughtful of you to do that, by the way. You didn't have to do that. You already support the channel enough, but it's just a very thoughtful thing he did. Because he said, I forgot to use the eBay affiliate link. And so he sent me a YouTube super after the fact. So next time, don't do that. It's okay. I send out the affiliate links. You don't have to use them if you don't want to. It's just a way to support the channel if you're already going to buy something on eBay anyway. So, but that was a beauty. AFA 85 archival case, less than 10 on the census. Absolute stunner there. And thank you again to Trilogy Hunter 77 for supporting the channel. Next up is an AFA 85 Droid C-3PO, brand new case style. That one sold for $761, which I thought was a great deal. We've seen some go recently even for $800 to $900. So that one went in a little bit below expectations. Great deal there. On to the bootlegs, okay? And with the bootlegs that are graded, a lot of people don't like graded bootlegs. That's okay. This one was a white semi-articulated Mexican bootleg. It was labeled 1980s. It's really a 1990s, and that's the game you play when you buy bootlegs. No one really knows exactly when they were made. Could this have been made in 1989? Yes. Could it have been made in 1991? Yes. Most bootleg collectors will say that this was a 1990s though, and it was labeled 1980s though. 85 plus from CAS. It sold for $187.50. This one is definitely a 1990s, even though it's labeled 80s. The 80s Mexican bootleg Bosque has a very specific plastic type, very specific paint scheme. They reuse the exact same mold in the 1990s. So it's hard to tell them apart unless you really know your stuff. But this is a paint scheme from the 1990s. It was a 70 grade. It sold for $192.50, which is probably about right. I mean, ungraded, they can go for 75 to, $80 thereabouts, ungraded. So if you factor in grading costs and authentication costs, but again, this is labeled 1980s. It's really a 1990s. And I've got a few from CAS that are like that, where they have the incorrect year on them. And whenever I resell them, which I have sold a few of them, I always make sure to tell people, hey, look, this is it's labeled 1980s. It's really, in my opinion, a 1990s. And I price it accordingly, or I try to. Next up is, again, one that's labeled 1980s, but it's really a 1990s B-Wing palette, graded 85 plus. That sold for $218.50, which I thought was a pretty good deal, just because the Mexican bootlegs are very tough to get in high grade, and the paint schemes are usually very sloppy. This one was a very clean one, in my opinion, and that, it included a weapon that is definitely a 1990s weapon in the hot pink, but $218.50 on that one. Now onto the Polish bootlegs, and some of these were actually mislabeled as well, unfortunately. This one was labeled correctly. This is a blue, unarticulated Polish bootleg Tusken Raider. Very tough to find in the blue color, and I would actually argue that that price is probably low. You don't see the blue, the metallic blue Tusken Raiders very often, and this was a good deal at $280. That's usually what they go for, if not higher, in my opinion. So great deal there. This one was labeled 1990s, and it was actually a 1980s, in my opinion. It could be a second generation, early 1990s. I can't really tell, but in my opinion, this one looks more like a 1980s. It's got the hand-painted white stripe on it, and that color scheme and that style, it just screams first generation to me, okay? And again, this is where you're starting to get into gray areas on how things are labeled versus what I think they are versus what a true expert, because I'm not an expert on bootlegs, but in my opinion, this is a 1980s. And bootleg experts, they might watch this video and say I'm an idiot, and that's fine because they know more than I do. But I'm just giving you my personal opinion that this one probably should have been labeled a 1980s. And that one sold for $148, which is a great deal there. This is a true third gen, as it's labeled here, for the General Lando. That sold for $202.50. That was graded CAS 85. This is a 1980s unarticulated Ewok from the Polish line. The Ewoks are pretty pricey, very tough to find, and that one sold for $385, which is a very fair price for what that is. Another unarticulated example, this is from the 1980s. This is a Polish bootleg Princess Leia, and that one sold for $201, which I thought was very fair. I mean, $175 to $250, anywhere in that ballpark is probably about right. Here's another one that was labeled third gen, but it was really a first gen Zuckuss. So this is actually a 1980s bootleg. I can tell you that for a fact because I have several of these in my collection. And that one sold for $232.50. And that's a great deal. That's a very fair price for what that is. And then finally is a third gen Zuckuss. This is how they typically look. There is also a third gen Zuckuss that is green, like a lime green, and I would love to have one of those, but they don't come up very often. This is the more common color scheme for the third generation Polish bootleg Zuckuss, and that one sold for $200, which I think was actually a really good deal for what it is, a CAS 85 plus, or 85. I have an 80 plus. I'm kind of merging everything in my brain, and my mouth can't keep up with my brain. So I have an 80 plus for this particular bootleg. This one is an 85 and sold for $200. I don't think I'd sell my CAS 80 Plus for $200. I just couldn't do it. I just like it too much. So someone got a really good deal on this one, I think, for a CAS 85. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this look at recent sales for vintage Star Wars items. Be sure to leave me a like if you enjoyed the video. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll be back soon.